Welcome into this edition of Crunch Time here on ASTV Productions. I'm your host, Joe Hamilton, along with my trusty co-host, Scott Tobin. Scott, how you doing, brother?
I'm good, Joe. How are you, man?
I'm doing really good. It was a beautiful day, and there's no rain in sight till at least next Wednesday. So I'm happy about that. Actually, tomorrow I'm going to a golf course to just ride around with my friends. Like while they're playing golf, they're letting me tag along. So it's going to be nice. I think it's like the golf course is near Peevely. I forget what it's called.
Peevely Farms?
No, it's like right. It might be Peevely Farms. I'm not too sure, but it's going to be a good time either way. So how's your week been, Scott?
It's good, man. It's good. It's nice outside. Yeah, tomorrow will be a nice day to be on the golf course. It's supposed to be right around 60 tomorrow and sunny, so that'll be fun.
You any good at golf, Scott?
I'm all right. We've talked about this a few times on other shows. I can drive the hell out of the ball. My short game is not the greatest in the world, but I enjoy getting out and playing every once in a while and having a couple of adult beverages while I play golf. I may lose my temper and throw a club every once in a while, but we have fun when we go out.
You know, I could see you losing your temper on things if you don't get it right the first time. So I get it. I totally get it. But Scott, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say I'm super competitive, man. That's just me. I don't like to lose.
That's the way I am. Like with certain video games, like I play like on a club team where you play your own position, and if I screw up, I get roasted. It's like a real hockey clubhouse, which is kind of funny, but you know, it's like I'm real competitive too, so I get it. Speaking of competitiveness, KK had his first start today, first spring start, and you know, we talked about your thoughts on KK yesterday, and he did not look good at all today. He only got one out in the first inning. Got taken out, and this is the messed up part about everything. He pitched a third of an inning or 2/3 of an inning, gets taken out, then is brought out for the second inning. How many times have you ever seen that in a spring training game?
Never, because apparently it's a new rule. I didn't know that it was a rule apparently until it happened today. I'd never heard of that, but yeah, apparently you can take somebody out and bring them back in spring training, which is really odd. I don't think you're going to see that happen very often. But yeah, I was just looking at his line: 2/3 of an inning, 4 runs, 5 hits. Not good, you know. But again, you have to look at the fact that it's his first spring training outing, so you don't take a whole lot out of that. Although it goes back to what I talked about last night. I'm not impressed with the guy's stuff. You know, I was actually listening to 101 earlier this afternoon. I heard Brad Thompson. Funny enough, they were breaking him down today. And Brad Thompson basically said, you know, KK is a guy that really doesn't have any pitch that's really overwhelming. You know, he's not a strikeout pitcher. His fastball is only 87, 88 miles an hour. That's what he tops out at it. So he's one of those guys that really, he has to be able to fool you. All 4 of his pitches need to be working. You know, he needs to be able to hit his spots with his curveball and his slider, and then, you know, use his fastball to kind of trick people with their eyes. But, you know, if all of his pitches aren't working, he's very hittable. He's not a strikeout guy. His hard hit rate's not good. His spin rate's not good. You know, I just, you know, and I've said that since I saw him last year. I've just not been impressed with what he did. I know he had an under 2 ERA in 30-something innings last year, but, you know, that's not enough of a sample size for me to feel comfortable with him being in the starting rotation. So I hope I'm wrong. I hope he goes out there and pitches really well. I'm just not really impressed with him with what I've seen. And overall, I'm not a big fan of Korean pitchers in the major leagues. You know, there's so many of them that it either hasn't worked or it's worked for a year or something, and then once hitters figure them out, they really struggle. I mean, there's the few that have worked. You know, Ryu's been pretty good. You know, I mean, there's been a few of them over the years. But a lot of them, after hitters see him a couple of times, they figure him out. I mean, look what happened to Sun 1-0 when he was here. You know, he had 3/4 of a really good year the first year, and then the end of that first year and the second year were really bad. And then he went to Toronto and a couple of other places and was okay, but was never that same pitcher. So I just am concerned about that.
I'm gonna date myself here, Scott, and I know I'm probably too young to be dating myself in terms of, because what I grew up with Hideo Nomo. I don't know, was he Korean or was he a Japanese? Either way, those guys. Yeah, go ahead.
No, go ahead. He was an Asian pitcher.
Yeah, either way, he had a successful Dodger career. You know what I mean? There aren't many guys you can list. Can you name any other guys that were successful in the major leagues?
I mean, yeah, there are some. Darvish, who won the Cy Young last year, but Darvish has been up and down in his career. He's had really good years, and then he's had bad years. I mean, there are some, but even Nomo, Nomo Mania when he first got to the Dodgers, and he was really good that first year. He was never that same pitcher after that. He had some decent years, but he was never the dominant pitcher that he was that first year when guys had not seen him before. Once guys had video of him and had seen him, then he was not as effective the rest of his career.
Yeah, but Scott, you got to think. I mean, he didn't drop off the face of the earth. You know what I mean? He was still somewhat decent.
He was decent. I mean, he wasn't dominant. He was dominant for a year and a half. The rest of his career, he was an average pitcher. And we see a lot of that with these guys.
Yeah, we do. And pitching wasn't a strong suit on both sides today. They were runs galore in this one. KK with giving up 3 runs in the first inning. And I thought, you know what? It's going to be tough to score because I remember going to a game, Todd Wellemeyer was on the mound. The Cardinals gave up 3 or 4 runs in the first inning. I'm like, I was talking to my dad right after that. You're not going to come back from that. And granted, this is spring training. I get it. But I thought, 3 runs down, this might be the first spring loss for the Cardinals. At least when you go down that early, Scott, it's hard to come back. It really is.
Three runs isn't really that hard to come back from. I mean, we see that happen a lot. But yeah, in spring training is different because you're going to see a ton of different pitchers and stuff like that. But yeah, it definitely wasn't a pitcher's day. 14-9 final, and you saw a bunch of different guys come through with big hits.
Wonder what Austin Dean was doing. I know you didn't see it, Scott, so I'm going to explain the play to you. In the first inning, he hits a fly ball. Austin Dean's in left field. This is a ball he should usually catch. The ball drifts on him, and he drops it. It hits his glove. He drops it. I mean, it was like a can of corn-looking fly ball, and he drops it. So that's to me, that's a product of the wind in spring training, right?
Yeah, although, you should – I saw the highlights of it. He still should have probably caught that ball. I don't know what to think of Austin Dean. That's another guy that I don't think will make the roster. I think he's going to be one of the guys that's – he may be in the satellite camp because we know there's going to be a satellite camp because they've pushed AAA's starting date back a month now. He may be one of those guys that comes up if they need something, but I don't see him making the roster. I think he's just a guy, So, he needs to make that catch, but, it is what it is.
John Nagowski with a big-time swing. This isn't a guy that's going to hit you a lot of home runs, but he is going to give you a professional at bat. Now, not sure how much he'll see in the big leagues this year, but it's nice to see. I mean, that thing was crushed.
Yeah, he hit it pretty well. That's another guy that, he's a veteran guy. He's 28 or 29. He's a career minor league guy. More of a defensive guy than an offensive guy. But, yeah, again, he's going to be another one of those guys that in a pinch you may see him up here for a week or two, kind of like you did last year, where you may see him, for a week or something if somebody gets hurt. But, he's more of a career minor league type player.
There were 2 more home runs hit, and the home runs hit today, Scott, make some of the fly balls hit in spring training look like little dunkers. These things were crushed. So good for the Cardinals, get them off the schneid, get their first spring training win, had 2 ties. When have you ever heard of, Scott, 2 ties in a row in spring training? In a row.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't usually happen like that, but again, this is a different spring training than we've ever seen before. I think the biggest key today was the fact that you saw Nolan Arenado get his first Cardinal RBI. one of many. And again today, much like we did with his hit yesterday, he took the ball to the opposite field, which just shows what a good hitter he is. He's not just a power guy. He's going to take pitches and hit them where they're pitched. And, we've seen that the last 2 days. So just a sign of what a really good ball player all the way around Nolan Arenado is.
Yeah, and he took the ball the other way, like you said, Scott, and he does what I think Matt Carpenter should do all the time. We harp on this. How many times we harped on this, Scott? Me and you alone. Hit the ball the other way. What have Nolan Arenado's 2 hits been? The other way. And that tells you what kind of swing he has. He's not trying to pull the ball.
Right. And again, we see that from Paul Goldschmidt a lot. And that's what Matt Carpenter did when he was a doubles machine. He did it all the time. It's when the Cardinals tried to turn him into a power hitter that he started trying to pull everything. So, it's going to be interesting to see what happens with Matt Carpenter. Again, that was a debate on a couple of other radio stations today. It's looking more and more, and I don't know if you heard, John Mozeliak was on the radio today, on MLB radio, and a couple of other places. But the writing's kind of on the wall. Matt Carpenter's going to be the second baseman. Unless he just falls on his face and can't hit it all, he's going to be the Cardinals' second baseman and probably their leadoff hitter.
Which I'm fine with if you don't change his swing and let him do what he wants. But another issue with that, Scott's going to be his back. His back's going to be a major X factor this year. Is it healthy? Is it not healthy? Because it's tough to come back from back injuries. Doesn't seem like he's really progressed from the last back injury. You know what I mean? So the back's a huge factor for me.
Yeah, I've said that for the last couple of years, that I think that's part of what's screwed up his swing and his bat speed. We haven't heard anything about his back so far this offseason. We'll see what happens. If he goes through the spring and doesn't hit at all, then Tommy Edman will be the second baseman. But if Carpenter is able to hit it all and produce, I think he's going to be your starting second baseman on opening day.
I was listening to a tidbit of the Countdown to Opening Day show on KMOX. And they had Mike Shannon on there. I think it was Claiborne talking to Shannon. Shannon basically came out and said, the Cardinals' pitching is not that strong. Do you agree with that?
Their bullpen is extremely strong. Their starting pitching, their starting rotation, there's a lot of questions. Their bullpen's as strong or better than anybody in baseball.
Right. No, but I mean, I think he meant starting pitching.
Right. And their starting rotation could be really good, but there's a ton of questions. A lot of it, we're going to get our first glimpse at Carlos tomorrow, and I think Carlos is the X factor to this rotation. If Carlos goes out there, it is the Carlos that we've seen in the past and the Carlos that he was in winter ball, that's a huge thing, and I think a lot of what Carlos does in the next week or two is going to have a major factor on whether the Cardinals make a move for a starting pitcher before we get to opening day. Because I think they really need Carlos to be that number 2 or that number 3 really dominant guy that we know that he has in him. We just need to see it. So I think that's going to be a huge factor in the next couple of weeks as to what the Cardinals do before opening day.
Yeah, it'll be real interesting to see what the Cardinals do pitching-wise because you still have Jake Odorizzi out there. We talked about it last night. I get it. But, as the spring goes on and he's still out there, that price gets lower and lower, I would think. So go out there and get him, man. I mean, especially when you don't have the certainty in Michaelis.
Here's the thing, though. All the national reports, and I've been following this pretty closely, it doesn't sound like Jake's his asking price is going to go down. It sounds like he's prepared to sit and wait until he gets what he wants or the team that he wants offers him something close to what he wants. Whether that's the Cardinals. If the Cardinals come calling and say, hey, we'll give you 1 year and $14 million, will he take it? Maybe. But here's my other problem with that. I know he's throwing. I know he's working out. But, he's already missed a week of spring training. So if you don't sign Jake Odorizzi say you would sign Jake Odorizzi 2 weeks from now, you've got 2 weeks then to get him ready for opening day, and I don't think he will be ready. I think you're looking at a couple of weeks into the season before he's really in form to be a starter and give you any length as far as innings. So
yeah,
that's something you got to look at too. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens. But like I said, I think Carlos is going to play a major factor in what happens there.
Carlos is going to be a big time factor. You're also going to have Daniel Ponce de Leon as a factor. You're going to have Alex Reyes as a factor. It'll be interesting to see with all the guys that are this close to the major leagues or have major league experience where they're going to kind of offset, if you will. I mean, what is Ponce in your mind, Scott?
You know what? Daniel Ponce de Leon's got really good stuff, but we've seen, that he has a hard time throwing strikes sometimes. He can rack up strikeouts, but he can't get through 4 or 5 innings because he's thrown 80 pitches in 4 innings. That's the only thing that worries me about Ponce trying to put him in the rotation and count on him is I'm not sure how many innings you can get out of him just because, that's kind of his forte at this point. So I think Ponce is really better being in the bullpen where you can use him a couple of innings and he's just max effort. And from everything I've heard, I don't think Alex Reyes is going to be in the rotation this year. They're just not going to take that chance of hurting him. They're not going to go from, he threw 30 innings last year. They're not going to go from that to have him try to throw 100 or 150 this year. I think they're going to try to get him to 80, 90, maybe 100 innings this year out of the bullpen and then have him start next year. But I really think the plan is to not put him in the rotation just because you really want to maximize what you can get from him this year and stretch him out as much as you can without risking hurting him because you try to stretch him out too much too soon.
What does that leave you, Scott? If those two guys aren't in your rotation, what does that leave you? Because you have potentially 2 more spots if, Michael is. So what does that leave you if the Cardinals don't go out and make that move?
I mean, there's other ways you could go. A guy like Jake Woodford was okay when they tried to use him in the rotation. We saw Johan Oviedo have some starts. He's on the 40-man rotation. That's
Zach Thompson.
You can look at. Thompson and Libator, neither one are on the 40-man roster. There is a spot. There's 1 spot left on your 40-man, but you would have to add one of those guys or to add both of them. You would have to take somebody off, and I'm not sure that they're ready because, you got to remember that neither one of them, while they were both in the satellite camp last year, neither one of them have pitched higher than A-ball. So, that's a big jump to ask them to try to go, really not pitching in a season last year and then try to jump all the way to the majors. So I'm not sure you want to go that way to start the season. I think it would be somebody more like Woodford or Oviedo, somebody like that, or maybe probably more likely than even that is probably John Gant. That's probably where they would turn internally.
What can you expect out of these pitchers, Scott? You said you don't know what you get out of a Daniel Ponce de Leon, but you really don't know what you're going to get through this whole rotation because, it's a product of all of baseball, Scott. And how many guys have thrown more than 30 innings? So you're going to see that piggyback. So
well, you are. You're going to see. I mean, you're not going to see that with Wainwright. Wainwright's going to be out there throwing 6 or 7 innings every time he pitches, more than likely. I think you're going to get 5 or 6 out of Flaherty at least. You are going to be careful. Well, if KK's in the rotation, I don't think there's going to be any limitations to him. I think they're going to throw him out there and ride him and try to get him to throw as many innings as possible. So, you're going to see some of that a little bit, but I don't think you're going to see the piggyback thing with the Cardinals as much as you think.
Wow. I mean, it's just I look at last year, Scott, and the innings that these guys had to go through, and in a short amount of time, it's a hard jump between 30 and 130 innings or 200 innings, whatever it is. You know what I'm saying?
Well, no, I know. And nobody's going to go to 200, but Flaherty was at 60 something. So, I can see, he's probably going to be at 150 or 160 again this year. Wainwright was in the 70s, so he's going to, Wainwright's going to go out there and throw, like he said, he's at the end of the career, so, he's pretty much said that. Just throw me out there until my arm falls off, basically. KK's a veteran. They're not going to be real cautious with him either.
Michael, if he's out there, they're not going to be cautious with him. Well, they might be cautious with
Well,
him.
well, they're going to be cautious with him because you're just not sure. That's the other thing. He's supposed to try to throw another bullpen over the weekend. They're hoping. So we're going to have a better idea of where Miles is at after this weekend. If he's able to throw his bullpen and looks good, then some of that fear that we have kind of goes away. I mean, there'll still be some because there'll still be some questions. But if he's able to throw a bullpen and not have a whole lot of pain, then you're starting to think, okay, he is going to get out there at some point, and maybe a John Gant or some combination of your bullpen can fill in for a couple of starts until Miles is really ready to go. So I think we're going to have some answers to all of that in the next couple of weeks. And again, like we've talked about, Jake Odorizzi is out there. And if Carlos struggles, if KK struggles again, if Michaelis isn't able to go, then I think that's when the Cardinals really start talking to Odorizzi and try to make something happen there.
Yeah. So do you have anything, Scott, before we move on?
No, you can go ahead and move on.
All right. So the St. Louis Blues are in action. A goal was already scored by the Blues. I did not get an update. I'm not even by a TV, Scott. So if you're seeing stuff, please let me know what just happened, because
I don't know, because my television that I'm watching, the feed for the Blues game has gone black, so I have no picture at all. So I don't know what's going on.
Wow. Okay. It is on NBCSN for those of you who are wanting to watch that while you're watching us. I get it. The Blues are starting Jordan Binnington tonight. I believe this is the first start since Saturday when he had that outburst. And frankly, that outburst has turned into a win. I mean, you did say, Scott, that it all hinges on what happens Monday night, and they won Monday night. So maybe this Blues team is getting some confidence here.
Yeah, let's hope so. Hopefully they can come out and play well tonight. I don't know what's going on with my TV. It's just that channel, so I don't know. There's something going on with AT&T View versus feed of that I'm not getting a picture. But yeah, no, they've won 2 in a row, and they've played a little bit better since that happened. So we'll see what happens tonight.
Hopefully it's not a back and forth game like the last 2 games have been, Scott, because like you said before, that can't happen. I mean, you need to be able to finish off teams, and the Blues haven't been able to do that as of late.
Yeah, I mean, you can have back and forth, but you don't want to have games keep happening where you've got 2 and 3 goal leads, and then you blow them, and you're ended up having to play overtime, or you lose those games, or you barely hang on like they did the other night. So that's not something you want. You want your defense to step up. And then, hopefully here in the next few days, we're going to see Tarasenko. Did you see Craig Berube's comments today about Tarasenko by any chance?
No.
It was really interesting because he basically said he's done all the practice that he needs to do. He's done all the work he needs to do. He's ready to play. And sitting out isn't going to get him any closer to being ready to play. He needs game action. But they're waiting for Vladdy to say that he's ready, that he feels like he can play. And Berube sounded like he was a little bit frustrated, like he's like, okay, come on. We need you to get out there. So I just found those comments kind of interesting. It was basically, okay, he's ready. Everybody said he's ready, physically. We're just waiting for him to say, okay, I'm ready to go out there.
And Lester chimes in, Sundqvist scored. So Oscar Sundqvist, I like guys like that, the gritty guys, and I feel like the Blues really need guys like that until they get some of these guys back. And, from what I hear, Tarasenko may be the only one coming back for a little while. These guys are on IR for the long term, and at least until almost playoff time. And the Blues are seemingly playing well with what they got. So I was a little worried, Scott, because yes, you still have talent with O'Reilly, Perron, Kyrou. It's just, it wasn't the surplus of talent we had before. You know what I'm saying? I shouldn't say talent. I should say proven talent.
Again, it's that next man up mentality that, the Blues have to have, that we've seen the Cardinals have so many times over the years. And the Blues have done it too. When they have injuries, somebody else has to step up and carry the load, and hopefully they can do that. And like we talked about last night, you just want to keep your head above water and be close as you get closer to the playoffs and you get the rest of these guys back and you get your reinforcements, and hopefully you're 100% when you get to playoff time.
Apparently, Scott, you gained a new friend. He said, Lester goes, "Thank you, Scott, for accepting my friend request."
You're welcome, Lester.
Lester's a good guy. He's the karaoke DJ at the bar that I go to sing karaoke, which, by the way, he wants us out there on a Saturday night. So it'll happen soon. That's for sure.
Yeah, we'll have to try to make that happen.
Yeah. So, Scott, Mizzou needed a win. They got a win. Talk about it.
That was a huge win. That's another game. That's another game that you had to have. It's a big win because it's a road win against an SEC team. Florida's a good ball club. Mizzou needed that win. It moves them to 15-7, and that was just a good all-around team game. I mean, you had 5 guys scoring double figures. That's huge. Nobody really blew anybody away. I mean, you had one guy with 17, 2 guys with 14. And then Tillman had 12 and Pinson had 11. So when you can have 5 starters go out there and play that well and they all get in double figures, and, that's what they needed to do. It was a team win. They needed to have it. They've got 1 game left, regular season, before the SEC tournament starts. They host LSU on Saturday, 2 o'clock at Mizzou Arena. If they could win that one and go 16-7, that would probably get them back into the top 25 going into that SEC tournament next week. And then you need to, from everything you're hearing from all the experts, they're in the tournament pretty much no matter what happens from here on out because of their resume, the wins they had early in the season. But if you can win, get 16-7, get back in the top 25, and then go into the tournament and win at least a game or two, whether they win it or not, it's going to be a tough tournament. That tournament's totally up for grabs. But if they can at least have a nice showing in that tournament, I think they can still be a 4 or 5 seed in the tournament when it rolls around, when Selection Sunday happens.
Selection Sunday is not till what? Next Sunday?
It's a week from Sunday, yes, sir.
It's crazy how I think it's the Missouri Valley. We talked about this last night. How they're playing their semifinal on this Sunday, but next Sunday they're playing the final.
It's the A10 that's doing that. Missouri Valley's playing this week.
I mean the A10. That just seems odd to me that you're playing on Selection Sunday.
Well,
does that seem odd?
No, most of the tournament finals are on Selection Sunday because they all end around 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, and then the Selection Sunday is at 5. And they do that because of all the automatic bids, because everybody that wins their tournament then gets automatically into the big dance. So that's why they do it that way. It's weird. The way the A10's doing their tournament this year is definitely weird because theirs was supposed to be next week and their championship game was supposed to be on Selection Sunday, but they moved the first 3 rounds to this week and left their championship game on Selection Sunday. So that's really interesting that they did it that way, but we'll see how it goes. And SLU plays their first game on Friday at noon because they got the double bye. So SLU will play Friday at noon for their first game.
Who will that be against, you think? It's out by now, you would think.
No, because it's going to depend on who wins their games the next 2 days.
So what is SLU's seed going into this?
They're the 4 seed going into the A10 tournament. They got the 4 seed. Top 4 teams get double byes. They'll play the first 2 rounds.
So where is the Illini in terms of a seed? That Big Ten tournament's going to be tough. I mean, you beat a Michigan. I don't know if you can do it again.
And they've still got another big game because they play Ohio State on Saturday. They're going to be, probably the 2 seed. They could be the 1. They're going to be the 1 or 2 seed going into that Big Ten tournament. But that tournament's going to be tough. If they beat Ohio State, they're probably we talked about last night that they may have locked up the number 1 seed in a region when they beat Michigan. If they could beat Ohio State, they would definitely lock up that number 1 seed, in the big dance. So they would probably be the 1 or 2 seed and probably the 1 in the Big Ten tournament. So That'll be fun, but like I said, that tournament's going to be up for grabs too because that's going to be a really tough tournament. You got a bunch of really good teams in the Big Ten this year.
Yeah, it's going to be fun, man. What tournament? I know you're going to be paying attention to it all, but what tournament excites you the most? Conference tournament.
They're all going to be interesting. I'm going to be watching the A10 to see what SLU does. Obviously, I'll be watching the SEC for Mizzou. I'll be watching the Big Ten. And then I'll watch some of the smaller tournaments. I'll watch Arch Madness this week to see who comes out of the Missouri Valley. You're going to want to see what Gonzaga does in the Mountain West. So, yeah, I mean, I'll be watching all of them. Pac-10 tournament's going to be interesting as well, or Pac-12. Sorry, I forgot. It's in Pac-12 now. That tournament will be interesting. And so will the Big 12 because it's going to be interesting to see what Kansas does because Kansas all of a sudden is playing a lot better. They beat Baylor, gave Baylor the first loss of the season last week. So that Big 12 tournament's going to be really interesting as well. So they're all going to be big. I'll be watching all of it.
It will be interesting, that's for sure. Yeah, I mean, for me, Scott, these tournaments are going to be fun. And who knows? I hope SLU can make the tournament, and that's sad because I was talking to Coach Dan Brown today from Melville, and we were kind of talking about these tournaments and how SLU was a lock before the season. We talk about it even, and now they won't even make the tournament if they don't get to the final. That just seems odd to me, man. It's like, and I said to you in a group chat, I'm like, man, are they really going to punish them because of COVID?
Well, I mean, part of it's COVID, part of it's because they had a couple of bad losses when they came back from the COVID. And then, you've got to be, like we've talked about, the A10's not one of the big power conferences. It's not the SEC, it's not the ACC, it's not the Big 10, it's not the Big 12. They're not one of those top conferences. So there's only a couple of teams that come out of that conference every year. And you've got VCU and you've got you got those other teams that are good. Richmond's good. Dayton's good. So SLU's got to come out and play well and, make some hay in the A10. And if they do, they've got the talent. So, I mean, it's very much in SLU's hands whether they play in the big dance or not.
It really is, and it will be interesting. Will you be watching the Missouri Valley too?
I will. Yep, I always do. And friend of the show, Tom Ackerman, is the voice of the Missouri Valley tournament this weekend on Fox Sports Midwest. So check that out and support our good buddy Tom.
Oh, that's right. He is. So, Scott, preview what you got to talk about tonight because that's I always like doing these segments because there's something that really isn't talked about outside of a few shows, a few things, this and that. What do you got for tonight?
We're going to dig into we're just going to dig a little bit into the NFL stuff again. I know we do that quite a bit on this show, but we're going to talk about some guys, just kind of dig into some of the NFL rumors, some of the guys that are out there, where things are going. That's just going to be kind of what we talk about. Who could be going where? Some of the big names.
Yeah, so stick with us on Crunch Time.
Hi, I'm JD Houghton, host of the SAS Sports Show. Catch it every Thursday at 5 p.m. Central Standard Time for all things Saskatchewan sports.
Welcome back to Crunch Time here on ASTV Productions. Scott, let's get into the NFL. Seems like this is a nightly topic, but, with the Super Bowl over, with J.J. Watt finally going to Arizona, things are starting to take shape, at least in terms of rumors.
Yeah, I mean, that's all it is right now because the NFL's new year hasn't started yet. So guys can't officially sign contracts yet. Free agency hasn't officially started in the NFL yet. So, everything is just rumors and speculation at this point because nothing can really be officially done until we get into the new league year, which happens in a couple of weeks. So, like you said, J.J. Watt was the first big domino to fall with him going to Arizona, which shocked everybody. There were a lot of rumors today. I don't know if you saw it. Adam Schefter and some people early this morning were talking about the Russell Wilson thing and smoke. Where there's smoke, there's fire. A lot of people think now that he may, if he does get moved, he may end up going to New Orleans, which that would be really interesting. They think that New Orleans may be the landing spot for Russell Wilson if he goes. And what makes that even more interesting is, I don't know if you've been paying attention, a lot of people haven't, but Drew Brees has been posting videos. He's working out like a maniac. He's not working out like a guy. He's in the gym with his trainer. He's throwing tires. He's doing football exercises. He doesn't look like a guy that's getting ready to retire. He looks like a guy who's getting ready to come back for another season. Everybody thought Drew Brees was going to announce his retirement, right after the playoffs were over, and he was going to take that job at NBC that we all know is waiting for him when he retires. But I'm not sure that's going to happen. I have a feeling Drew Brees is coming back. Maybe it's not with the Saints. He reworked his contract, so he's only going to make $1 million. He's only $1 million hit on the cap for the Saints. He restructured everything. So maybe he doesn't come back to New Orleans. Maybe he goes somewhere else. But I have a sneaky feeling Drew Brees is coming back.
Scott, is this becoming another Favre watch? I mean, before the Favre watch happened, you know what I mean. It almost makes me think Favre watch part 2 is going to happen.
No, because it's totally different, because Brett was in the media talking about it. Am I going to come back? Am I not going to come back? What do I want to do? Brees isn't talking. He's not saying anything, but he is posting videos of him working out. His trainer's posted videos of him working out. And his trainer, even in the video that he posted, even said, I'm not really sure what he's doing. So, I mean, Brees isn't, saying, hey, look at me, I may come back. It's just the fact that, you don't work out like that if you're walking away from the game and going in the broadcast booth. You're working out like that because you're 41 years old and you're trying to make one more run at a playoff spot and probably a Super Bowl run. So, I wouldn't be shocked at all if Drew Brees ends up playing this year.
I wouldn't be shocked at all either, but I just don't know at this point. And what do you do with Jameis Winston? Because he wants to be a starter, right?
He's a free agent. There's no guarantees Jameis Winston's going to be in New Orleans.
No, I mean, do you think he's a starter, Scott? Yes or no?
Somebody's going to throw money at Jameis Winston. He'll be a starting quarterback somewhere. I'm not sure it's going to be in New Orleans, but somebody's going to get paid Jameis Winston to be a starter, and probably overpay for Jameis Winston just because of his skill set, because he's got all the talent in the world. So somebody is going to throw money at Jameis Winston.
If Jimmy Garoppolo, and this is a rumor that I've coined, well, I haven't coined it, but I could see it happening. If Jimmy Garoppolo doesn't go back to New England, like I think, watch New England go out and get Jameis Winston.
I don't know. I'm not sure that that's the right spot for him. I could see them going. There's some guys that I could see that would make more sense. A guy like Alex Smith would be a really good guy. That would be a really good fit for him in New England, because Washington's going to release him in the next couple of days. I can see Alex Smith there. You know what would, and this is going to sound really weird to say it because he's not been good anywhere but Philadelphia, basically. Yeah. But a guy that I can see fitting in Bill Belichick's system, I can see them making a trade for a guy like Nick Foles for a year. That would be a guy I can see going. Those kind of guys I can see going there. I don't see a Jameis Winston fitting in Belichick's system. That's not the kind of guy that he's going to want.
What do you see New England doing then? Do you see New England maybe going after a Deshaun Watson? Do they have enough to go after a guy like Deshaun Watson?
No. Again, I don't think Deshaun. I don't see Deshaun being a fit there. And they're not going to do that. New England has too many needs to give up that many draft picks for a quarterback. I mean, if I had to bet, I would say, like you said, and like I've said a bunch of times, I think Jimmy Garoppolo goes back there because Bill Belichick didn't want to trade him in the first place. So if I had to guess, I would say Jimmy Garoppolo is back there. Another guy that would make some sense there that I could see being there, although I don't know the Jets would trade him there, Sam Darnold would fit in that system, that kind of guy. Those are the kind of guys that Belichick wants, a kind of a Brady type guy, more of a pocket guy, more of a guy that's going to throw the short passes, work the field. That's not really what Jameis Winston or Deshaun Watson does. That's not really their skill set. That's not really what Cam Newton did. That's why Cam didn't really work in New England. So I think he's going to go more in that kind of a direction. But it's going to be interesting. I still think, and I've talked to some people. I've talked to a bunch of people in the last couple of weeks. I still don't think Deshaun Watson gets traded. I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know what's going to happen. What?
I don't believe you. I think he does get traded. I think it goes down a little bit. Scott, I know it's going to be a ginormous package, but it's not going to be what it was when you told me first, me and Wags, when you told us this is the package they want. I think it's going to be a little bit lower than that.
They don't want to trade him. Here's the thing.
Then build around him. Get him a couple receivers because
but he doesn't want to be there. He said that he told their head coach that he's never going to play another snap in Houston.
Then he's never going to.
Deshaun doesn't have any power here, Joe. Here's the thing. Houston has control. They can say, he can say, I don't want to play there. And Houston can say, fine, retire. Because even if you retire and try to come back, we still have your rights. You still can't go anywhere. Because even if you retire and come back, you're still under contract. We still have your rights. Deshaun Watson has no options here. As much as he wants to think he does, he has no power here. This all comes down to Houston. And if Houston's, from everything we hear, Houston's pretty much refused to talk to anybody, even when they call and make an offer. They're saying we're not going to trade him. He's going to play here. He's saying we're not. So, you could see a situation with a guy like Carson Palmer in Cincinnati a few years ago where the same thing happened. He just said, I'm not going to play for you. And the Bengals said, well, we're not going to trade you. And he retired. He missed, almost a full season. And then he did come out of retirement and he talked the Bengals into trading him. But he walked away because he wasn't going to play for them and they wouldn't trade him.
Man, this is going to get hairier and hairier by the day. So I know you got probably more rumors, but I want to bring this up, Scott. The fact that Adam Schefter goes on Facebook today, or at least on his Twitter account and Facebook, saying that Mike Mayock, the GM of the Raiders, has come out and said that Derek Carr had his best years as a Raider under John Gruden. Do you agree with that? And is there still a ceiling for Derek Carr?
Yeah, I mean, he's just saying, he's saying that, Derek Carr's had his best years here with the Raiders. Basically, he's saying that since John Gruden's taken over, that Carr's become a better quarterback than he was before Gruden got there. And so, he's basically saying we're not moving on from Derek Carr because him and John Gruden work so well together. So, yeah, there's still upside for Derek Carr. You give him another weapon offensively, another receiver, he's going to put up better numbers. He hasn't had a ton of weapons the last couple of years with the Raiders. They're starting to build around him again. But, we saw what he did a couple of years ago when he had really good weapons at wide receiver when Amari Cooper was there and Michael Crabtree was there. Derek Carr was an MVP candidate. So if you put those weapons around him, he could get the Raiders to the playoffs and probably potentially to a Super Bowl. That's where they were headed a couple of years ago before he broke his leg at the end of the season.
Yeah, that was an awful injury. A guy in Derek Carr, I mean, Scott, was there a point where you weren't high on the guy, even though you thought, because he wasn't having that good of a career at one point, and then you bring in those guys? Or did you always think, get this guy around more weapons than, this is earlier, Scott. Were you thinking the same thing?
I mean, no, because he was always good. He came into the league. His second year was when Amari Cooper came to the Raiders.
Okay,
so they kind of grew up together. So in his first couple of years, he grew and got to be really good. And then the Raiders traded Amari Cooper and Michael Crabtree left in free agency, and then he didn't have any weapons. And then he struggled, and so people kind of were down on Derek Carr. And then this year we saw the Raiders kind of start to build up around him again, and they were better and in the playoff hunt for most of the year. And people started to go, oh, Derek Carr looks pretty good again. So, again, it comes down to, he's a quarterback that isn't going to carry the franchise all by himself. He's a really good quarterback. He's not an elite quarterback. He's a guy who needs good players around him to get the team to where they want to go.
Who besides Derek Carr carries this franchise? I can name one guy, and you tell me yes or no. Darren Waller.
Well, Waller's good. You know, they've got a good young running back. You know, so they're building pieces around Derek Carr. You know, that team is definitely building, and it's going to be interesting to see what they do in free agency. You know, one of the guys that they've talked about possibly bringing in to help Derek Carr is Juju Smith-Schuster. San Francisco and Vegas seem to be the two leading landing spots for Juju. So if you put Juju on that team and Henry Ruggs comes back, you know, the Raiders drafted him high last year and he had some injury problems. If you have Juju and you have Ruggs on the outside and you have the running game that they've started to build and the tight end that they've got, and their defense is pretty good, all of a sudden the Raiders are a team that can compete and be right there with the Chiefs. I mean, the Raiders beat the Chiefs last year. So, I mean, they're a couple of pieces away, but if you put those pieces around Derek Carr, the Raiders can be very tough.
One interesting piece that was, and I failed to talk about this yesterday when it happened, but Kyle Rudolph was released from the Minnesota Vikings. Did that shock you at all? Kyle Rudolph's been a good tight end in this league for a while.
He is, but he's starting to get a little bit of age on him. And, you know, like we've talked about with the NFL, when you start to get a little bit older in this league, you know, if they can find a cheaper, younger version of you in the draft, they're going to make that move. And, you know, that's what the Vikings are doing now. You know, they're going to say, okay, you're making more money than we want to pay you. You're getting into your 30s. We're going to let you go, and we're going to go draft a new tight end, and we'll move on a lot cheaper.
What's next for Kyle Rudolph?
There'll be some teams that are interested.
Raiders?
You know, as far as do what?
Vegas?
Maybe. I mean, there's going to be a bunch of teams that are interested. You know, I don't know that Kyle Rudolph is an every down tight end anymore, but you know, there'll be some guys. There'll be probably 5 or 6 teams that are interested. I'm right off the top of my head. I'm not sure who the leading teams would be, because there's going to be a few tight ends that are out there in free agency. But he's going to find a job. He'll land somewhere on his feet, definitely.
I got a spot for you, Scott.
Where's that?
The New Orleans Saints have released Jared Cook, both of their tight ends, actually. That wouldn't be a bad option if Drew Brees is coming back. If he does come back to the New Orleans Saints. Kyle Rudolph helping Drew Brees, I think that would be one hell of a duo right there.
Yeah, I can see that. Although I would imagine that the Saints are releasing those guys because they're trying to get under the cap, because they're going to make other moves and they're going to draft a young tight end. But yeah, if Brees is coming back, I can see that possibly.
Yeah, I would say so. Scott, what do you got before we go to break?
You know, those are the big rumors right now. You know, there's a few more, like we talked about the Aaron Jones thing. It sounds like he's probably going to sign, you know, probably going to commit to signing with Miami in the next couple of days. You know, again, he can't actually sign, but that's probably going to happen in the next couple of days, as we're going to hear that Aaron Jones is going to be a Miami Dolphin. Jadeveon Clowney came out today. He had some surgery. He's going to be healed up and ready to go by draft time, so his free agent market will pick up. You know, there's some talk that he may go back to Tennessee. Cleveland's interested. Pittsburgh might be interested. Baltimore might be interested. So the AFC North teams apparently are all kind of interested in Jadeveon Clowney plus Tennessee. So those are kind of the big rumors right now. Again, stuff like Juju, where he may go. But those are kind of the big things, and we're going to hear more and more names and more landing spots in the next couple of weeks as free agency really ramps up and we get closer and closer to the NFL draft, which we're about 7 weeks from right now.
That's crazy, Scott. I mean, the NFL clock really doesn't stop. I mean, you have all these rumors, then you have the draft, free agency, then you have the new season, you know, and pretty soon it's going to be time for the Hall of Fame game. That's crazy enough if it does happen. I mean, but still, getting to that time. So when we come back, I'm going to talk about Aaron Boone having to go under the knife and getting a pacemaker. This story, when I saw it, was shocking. I'll come back with that right after this.
Theo here on ASTV. Check out my show Tuesdays and Thursdays, 6 p.m. On the Ice. Me and my guests break down all of the hottest and latest topics surrounding the world of hockey.
Scott and Joe back with you. And news came out today that Yankees skipper Aaron Boone had to go under the knife and receive a pacemaker. That he is 45 years old. Scott, you went through a heart attack, in your 30s. You're in your 30s. Talk about that, Scott. I mean, this is an odd situation. No one knew there was anything wrong with him.
No, I mean, you can understand as a manager, with all the stress and pressure and probably high blood pressure and everything else that led to Aaron Boone having that, but at least he's stepping away and getting a pacemaker put in and he can deal with his issues. Mine was a little bit different than his. I actually had a heart attack and didn't know it. I had a heart attack apparently, and what happened, I had a blood clot form on the wall of my heart, and it kept forming and bursting. And I didn't feel right. I knew something wasn't right, but I never considered that. And I had issues for about a week. Just wasn't feeling good. Had some chest pain, but never ever thought anything about a heart attack. And then went to the doctor. Finally, some people are like, dude, it's been a week. Starting to worry. You probably need to go to the doctor. So I went to the emergency room because they made me. Like I wasn't even going to go. And they forced me to go to the emergency room, and I went in. And by the time the person that took me dropped me off at the door and they went to park in the parking lot, by the time they came in, they had already taken me into the emergency room and were scheduling surgery to put a stent in my heart because this blood clot kept forming and bursting and was putting a hole in the wall of my heart. So I had to have stents put in. And they don't know what caused it because normally you have high blood pressure or, your diet's bad or something. I didn't have anything, no signs, no warnings. I have to take medicine for the rest of my life, but there were no warning signs, no anything to mine. And luckily Aaron Boone, realized that he had an issue and, he's going to step away and get a pacemaker. And that's huge for him. Hopefully he's able to get that done and get himself back in good shape and get back in the Yankees clubhouse in the dugout as soon as possible. But yeah, to have a heart attack or a pacemaker at any time is scary, but to have one when you're that young is really scary.
Yeah, and another thing I wanted to get into is the fact that could Albert play after the season? There were reports out there that his wife Dee Dee went out on Instagram and said this would be Pujols' final year. Didn't really say if it was in LA or in general. But there have been rumors out that he could still play if he's chasing 700 home runs. Do you see that happening, Scott?
Well, Albert himself said that today. He did an interview. He did an interview today, and they was asked that question if he would come back if he was close to 700. And he said, yeah, if he was close to 700, why not? And you can't blame him for that. I mean, if he's close to 700 home runs, if he's within 15 or 20, he could possibly come back. And Albert had a bunch of comments. Did you see his comments that he had about Yachty today?
Yeah, and I mean, those comments are obvious. They're obvious. Yachty is the best catcher of his time. Yachty is the best catcher of his and Albert's time. And I agree with that.
Well, Albert went even farther than that and said Yachty might be the best defensive catcher ever. He didn't just say his time. He said best defensive catcher ever.
Well, Scott, what do you think? Because there's a certain guy by the name of Johnny Bench that played who probably would take offense to that.
I don't know if he would. Yachty's really close. Johnny Bench, Pudge, Yachty, I think they're all in that same stratosphere. I think, different eras. And you got to remember, Johnny Bench was he was a very good defensive catcher, but Bench was more of an offensive catcher than he was a defensive catcher in a lot of ways. I mean, he was a very good defensive catcher, but he also put massive offensive numbers up. I think Yadi's right behind him. I'm not saying that he's the greatest of all time. I think he's one of the top 3 or 4. Those were just Albert's comments. And then Albert talked about him and Yadi talking about retiring, going out together. They've talked for years about retiring at the same time and going out together so that they can go into the Hall of Fame together. So, it'll be interesting to see what happens. If Albert really struggles this year, I don't see him coming back. If he has a good year this year and like I said, if he gets within 15 or 20 home runs to 700, then we may see him come back next year. But if he goes out this year and really struggles and, only hits 220 or something, then I think he probably calls it a career.
Yeah, I would think so as well. And with Albert, you see he's in pain every time he runs, it seems like now. Scott, how long have the foot issues been going on? I know they were kind of hush-hush about it, and he played through a lot of it, but how long have they really been going on?
At least 11 or 12 years, because he had it it was starting his last couple of years with the Cardinals. He started dealing with plantar fasciitis when he was here. So it's been going on for over a decade, that he's fought through it and played with it. And when you think about it, that's the same thing that ended Mark McGwire's career. McGwire couldn't play anymore, had to walk away. He had that contract with the Cardinals and had to walk away and not finish those years because of this. So the fact that Albert's been able to play as well as he has for the last 12 years dealing with that just talks about how tough and what a great competitor Albert Pujols is.
Yeah, he is a hell of a competitor. Gonna be a first ballot Hall of Famer. Can you believe there's people thinking that Yadier Molina won't be a first ballot Hall of Famer?
Oh, again, we're going to hear those arguments from some people. There's people that don't think Yadier Molina is a Hall of Fame. There are people that don't think Yadier Molina is a Hall of Famer at all, which is just absolutely ridiculous. It shows that people don't really pay attention to baseball. But Yadi's going to be in the Hall of Fame, and I would imagine he'll end up being a first ballot. I would be shocked if he's not.
I would be shocked too. Well, hey, it's been a hell of a show tonight. Braden Shen scored. The Blues are up 2-0 on the Anaheim Ducks. End of the first period. This team's starting to find its stride, and it's looking good. The thing is, Scott, the reason why I'm optimistic about this right now is because look at the division the Blues are in. The Blues are in a division that's top heavy. You know who the top 3 teams are, including the Blues. You have Vegas, Colorado, then St. Louis. The rest of that, the 4th spot's it's gonna be a dogfight, an absolute dogfight for that 4th spot. So that's why I'm a little more optimistic than some people would be right now.
Yeah, again, just don't get too high or too low. Just remember the fact that they're dealing with all the issues that they're having right now. They're going to fight and claw. And I think you're right. I think they're one of the top 3 best teams in the division. So I think when it all is said and done, they'll be right there. But it may not always be pretty for the next month or two.
It may not always. You're right, Scott. You're right. So great show tonight, guys. Thank you for watching. For Scott Tobin, I'm Joe Hamilton. We will see you again tomorrow night here on ASTV Productions.
Oh!